Either you run the day, or the day runs you. Most people don't lose their lives all at once. They lose them quietly, a little every morning. In the first 10 minutes after waking up, before the coffee, before the sunlight fully enters the room, before the world even asks anything from them. Because the moment they open their eyes, the day is already pulling them. Notifications, deadlines, bills, responsibilities, noise, and without realizing it, they begin reacting instead of living. That's the strange tragedy of adulthood. Nobody warns you that life slowly becomes a series of responses. You respond to messages, respond to problems, respond to emergencies, respond to expectations, respond to disappointments, year after year, until one day you wake up exhausted. Not because life was hard, but because you were never actually steering it. You were surviving it. And there's a terrifying difference between surviving your days and owning them. Because when a man stops directing his life intentionally, the world will gladly direct it for him. Silently, gradually, almost invisibly. And the frightening part is, it can happen to hardworking people, responsible people, good people, especially good people, the kind who sacrifice constantly, the kind who carry families on tired shoulders, the kind who keep showing up while internally collapsing. From the outside, they look stable. Inside, they feel like they disappeared years ago. Maybe you know that feeling. You wake up tired before the day even begins. You scroll through your phone not because you care, but because silence feels heavier. You tell yourself you'll change tomorrow. Tomorrow you'll wake up earlier. Tomorrow you'll start exercising again. Tomorrow you'll stop wasting time. Tomorrow you'll finally take control. But tomorrow keeps moving. And eventually, a quiet fear begins growing inside you. Not the fear of failure, the fear that this might become your entire life. That years from now, you'll still be exhausted, still distracted, still emotionally numb, still saying soon. And deep down, you know something uncomfortable. It's not that you don't have time. It's that your life has become emotionally unmanaged. That's what most people never realize. The greatest form of exhaustion is not physical labor. It's waking up every day without inner direction. Because a human being can survive incredible hardship when there is purpose attached to it. But meaningless repetition, that destroys people slowly. A man can work 12 hours and still feel alive if he knows why he's doing it. But give him comfort without meaning, routine without intention, movement without direction, and eventually, something inside him begins to rot. This is why so many people feel empty even when life looks fine. They have income, responsibilities, maybe even families. But internally, they feel disconnected from themselves. Because somewhere along the way, they stopped asking the most important question. Am I living intentionally? Or am I just reacting? There's a reason the days blur together as we age. Behavioral psychologists have studied this for years. The brain automates repetition. When life becomes predictable, your mind stops recording experiences deeply. That's why childhood felt endless. Everything was new. But adulthood becomes frighteningly fast because most people repeat the same emotional patterns every day. Same stress, same habits, same distractions, same emotional avoidance. The brain compresses repetitive experiences, and suddenly, 10 years disappear. That's why some people wake up at 50 feeling shocked, not because they're old, but because they barely remember becoming old. Life happened while they were mentally elsewhere, distracted, overstimulated, emotionally absent. That's the hidden danger of living unconsciously. The days don't feel stolen while they're happening. Only afterward. Only when the mirror changes. When parents age. When children grow distant. When energy fades. When dreams quietly expire from neglect. Then the realization hits. I thought I had more time. But time was never the real issue. Attention was. Where your attention goes, your life follows. And today, attention has become the most hunted resource on earth. Every app wants it. Every platform fights for it. Every algorithm studies your weaknesses better than you do. And if you don't consciously protect your mind, your life slowly becomes fragmented. A little focus here, a little anxiety there, a little dopamine, a little distraction, until your inner world feels scattered beyond repair. That's why so many adults feel emotionally restless now. Even during moments of rest, their nervous systems never fully stop moving. They sit on the couch, but internally they're sprinting, thinking about money, regret, their future, their aging body, the opportunities they missed. And underneath all of it, a painful question quietly lingers. Did I become the person I was supposed to become? That question haunts more people than failure ever will, because failure hurts. But unrealized potential? That becomes a lifelong ghost, especially for men. Men often suffer silently because society taught them to measure their worth through usefulness. Provide, endure, handle it, keep moving. So they become emotionally isolated while pretending to be strong. But strength without reflection eventually becomes self-destruction. A man who never pauses to examine his life slowly loses connection with himself. He works, consumes, sleeps, repeats, and one day he realizes he hasn't truly felt alive in years. Not deeply alive, just operational. That's the word many people secretly are now. Operational, functioning, performing responsibilities, but emotionally absent from their own existence. And the dangerous part is, modern life rewards this behavior. People praise productivity while ignoring emptiness. They admire busy people without asking whether they're fulfilled. But busyness and purpose are not the same thing. Some people are busy escaping themselves. That's why quiet moments feel uncomfortable now. Silence exposes things distraction hides. Regret, loneliness, fear, grief, unprocessed anger. So people stay stimulated constantly. Music, podcasts, scrolling, streaming, noise, anything to avoid sitting alone with their own thoughts. But here's the paradox most people discover too late. The life you want is hidden inside the conversations you avoid having with yourself. Not in more distraction, not in more consumption. In honesty, brutal honesty. The kind that arrives late at night when the house is quiet. When you finally admit, you're tired of wasting your own life. Not because you're lazy, but because somewhere along the way, you stopped believing your life was still changeable. That's what prolonged disappointment does to people. It shrinks possibility. A person doesn't suddenly give up on themselves. It happens gradually. A failed attempt here, a betrayal there, a financial struggle, years of stress, unspoken sadness. Eventually, the mind adapts to mediocrity for protection, because hoping hurts when life keeps disappointing you. So people lower expectations. Quietly, dangerously. They stop dreaming boldly, stop trying fully, stop believing deeply, and eventually they build identities around limitation. This is just who I am. But often, that isn't identity. It's accumulated emotional fatigue. There's a difference, a massive difference. Because identity says, this is my nature. Fatigue says, I've been carrying pain too long. Many people who think they lack discipline are actually emotionally exhausted. They don't need more shame. They need reconnection. Reconnection to meaning, to self-respect, to intention. That's where real transformation begins. Not with motivation. Motivation is fragile. It disappears when stress arrives, when sleep gets worse, when life becomes heavy. That's why disciplined people aren't necessarily more inspired. They're simply more intentional. They decide who they want to be before the day begins. That's the real meaning behind the quote. Either you run the day, or the day runs you. It's not about control over everything. It's about refusing to surrender your inner direction. Because life will always be unpredictable. People will disappoint you. Money will fluctuate. Your body will age. Unexpected pain will arrive. But the deepest form of power is maintaining internal leadership despite external chaos. And that starts in small moments. Very small moments. How you wake up, what you consume mentally, what you tolerate repeatedly, what you do when nobody watches. People underestimate the psychology of small actions. But identity is built through repetition. Every action becomes evidence. Every choice quietly teaches your brain who you are. When you constantly break promises to yourself, your self-respect erodes. Not dramatically, quietly. You say you'll wake up early. You don't. You say you'll exercise. You postpone it. You say you'll stop wasting time. You scroll another hour. These moments seem insignificant individually, but psychologically, they accumulate. And eventually, your subconscious forms a painful conclusion. I cannot trust myself. That sentence destroys more dreams than lack of talent ever will. Because once trust in yourself disappears, discipline becomes almost impossible. That's why rebuilding your life isn't about intensity. It's about restoring self-trust. Slowly, keeping tiny promises, creating evidence, proving to yourself that your words still mean something. This is why genuinely disciplined people often appear calm. They are no longer negotiating with themselves constantly. Their habits reduced internal chaos. And chaos is exhausting. Most people aren't tired from work alone. They're tired from internal conflict, from constantly arguing with themselves. I should. I need to. I'll start tomorrow. I know better. That internal friction drains enormous emotional energy. But when your actions align with your values, something powerful happens. Your mind becomes quieter. Not perfect, not euphoric, just quieter. And peace is deeply underrated, especially today. Modern people chase stimulation while secretly craving peace. Peace of mind, peace in identity, peace in knowing they aren't wasting their lives anymore. Because the older you get, the more you realize happiness is not excitement. It's alignment. Knowing your life matches your deeper values. Knowing your days are not empty repetitions. Knowing you are becoming someone you respect. That changes everything. And strangely, the transformation usually begins in unimpressive ways. A morning walk, turning off the phone earlier, reading again, sitting quietly for 10 minutes, keeping one promise consistently. Small acts, but psychologically, they are revolutionary because every intentional action sends a message to your nervous system. My life is still in my hands. That feeling matters more than people realize, especially after years of helplessness. Many adults secretly feel trapped inside routines they no longer recognize. Wake up, work, pay bills, sleep, repeat until old age. No wonder depression feels so widespread. The human spirit was never designed merely to function mechanically. People need meaning, movement towards something, a reason to endure difficulty. Viktor Frankl once observed that human beings can survive immense suffering if suffering contains meaning. Without meaning, even comfort becomes unbearable. That's why some wealthy people are miserable, and some struggling people still radiate peace. Meaning changes the emotional weight of existence, and meaning rarely arrives accidentally. It must be cultivated intentionally, protected intentionally, lived intentionally. That's the hidden responsibility of adulthood nobody teaches you. If you do not consciously shape your inner life, the outer world will shape it for you. Through fear, through distraction, through comparison, through consumption, and slowly, you become someone you never intended to become. Not through one catastrophic decision, but through thousands of unconscious days. That's why this quote is more than productivity advice. It's existential. Either you direct your attention, or the world directs it for profit. Either you shape your habits, or your habits shape you. Either you confront your pain, or your pain silently controls your behavior. Either you run the day, or the day runs you. And perhaps the saddest part of aging is realizing how much of life was lived unconsciously. How many moments were missed because the mind was elsewhere? How many evenings disappeared into numb distraction? How many conversations were half-felt? How many dreams quietly died from postponement? But there is also something strangely beautiful about realization, because awareness changes people. The moment a person truly sees their life clearly, change quietly becomes possible again. Not overnight. Real transformation is rarely dramatic. Movies lie about that. Most meaningful change is slow, uncomfortable, repetitive, invisible at first, like a man choosing to wake up 30 minutes earlier, not because he suddenly became extraordinary, but because he's tired of abandoning himself. That's where dignity returns, not in perfection, in effort, in intentional living, in refusing emotional surrender. And maybe that's what maturity really is. Not becoming fearless, but becoming honest. Honest about your habits, your distractions, your wasted years, your loneliness, your avoidance, and then choosing, quietly, to reclaim your life anyway, even if you start late, especially if you start late. Because contrary to what fear tells you, it is never weakness to rebuild yourself. The real tragedy is refusing to. There are people walking around today who gave up internally decades ago. Their bodies continued. Their responsibilities continued. But emotionally, they stopped believing life could still become meaningful. Don't become one of them, because life changes surprisingly fast once attention changes. Once mornings become intentional, once your environment changes, once your mind stops consuming poison constantly, once you begin protecting your peace instead of sacrificing it for endless noise, you start feeling something unfamiliar again. Presence. You notice the sky more, conversations more, your own thoughts more. You stop rushing through your existence like it's an inconvenience. And slowly, life stops feeling like survival. That doesn't mean suffering disappears. It won't. Some days will still feel heavy. Some nights will still feel lonely. There will still be uncertainty. But there's a profound difference between painful days and purposeless ones. Purpose gives suffering structure. Without it, pain feels random. That's why self-respect matters so deeply. A person with self-respect suffers differently. They still struggle, still fail, still doubt themselves, but they do not completely abandon themselves anymore. And perhaps that's the real battle of adulthood. Not becoming rich, not becoming famous, simply refusing to disappear internally while carrying the weight of life externally. That takes strength, quiet strength, the kind nobody applauds, the kind built in ordinary mornings, in disciplined evenings, in uncomfortable honesty, in choosing growth when nobody is watching. And maybe one day, years from now, you'll look back at this period of your life differently, not as the years you were lost, but as the years you finally woke up, the years you stopped drifting unconsciously, the years you realized time is not infinite, the years you understood that peace requires intention, that discipline is self-respect, that attention is life, that consistency shapes identity, and that every day, every ordinary, forgettable, difficult day is quietly becoming your future. That realization changes a person, because once you truly understand that your days are your life, you stop treating them casually. You become more careful with your attention, more protective of your energy, more intentional with your habits, more honest with yourself. Not perfectly, but consciously. And in a distracted world, conscious living becomes a form of rebellion. So tomorrow morning, before the noise begins, before the pressure returns, before the world starts demanding pieces of you again, Pause. For a moment, just pause and ask yourself honestly, am I leading my life or merely reacting to it? Because the answer to that question quietly shapes everything. Your future, your peace, your identity, your regrets, your purpose. Either you run the day or the day runs you.